All right, there we go. Hey y'all, I'm Alex, and welcome to MusicHub. I want to make this channel introduction video so people can have some context about why a channel called MusicHub has so many videos on art forms that aren't music. And also just to give you a sense of my long-term game plan with this channel and the journey that I'll be taking, and perhaps you'll want to take too. So about me, I'm formerly a music student. I'm fascinated by the history of music, specifically the history of the recording industry. As an art form, as a part of culture, as a business, the whole works. It is so endlessly fascinating with so many stories, personalities, incredible moments of good and bad fortune, and most of all, so much amazing music. And I want to not only discover that music myself, but I want to be able to share it with people so others can discover it. And I also want to be able to contextualize it so that people can get a sense of what about a particular song or album or mixtape makes it unique, makes it valuable. I think anyone is capable of enjoying a piece of music, and I think every piece of music has some level of intrinsic value. My goal is to try and find that value and promote it and contextualize it with the lives of the creators involved, the state of music in that era and that cultural space, and then contrast it also with the reaction to that music. Did people like it or not, and why? What contributed to a particular album or even a whole musical style not being well received? I want to both understand why the established musical canon exists in the way it does, and I want to also challenge that understanding in a way that makes sense. Not to be a contrarian per se, but to understand and bring sort of an alternative perspective to the established hegemony, if you will. Hegemony. Yes, I can pronounce words correctly. So there's a lot that I want to understand from my own personal knowledge, and there's a lot that I also want to convey to others. So, what is my plan for that? In the middle of 2021, I started doing a full proper deep dive into the history of music. I've had, music history classes and I've done my own explorations, but I've always thought that the way music history has been taught, both in academia and even in popular history narratives like books about the subject and stuff, I've always found it really lacking. There's usually ignorance for a particular genre. In the classical music textbooks, the complete ignorance and dismissal of popular music, I think, is horrifying, if not altogether unsurprising. And then even in popular music textbooks, completely ignoring either music made before the rock and roll era, popular music before the rock and roll era, I mean, and or dismissing like hip hop music, for instance, and contemporary pop music, focusing on rock music as a genre. Popular music narratives have always been very centric around the idea of rock music, and I think that is another hierarchy that I want to sort of challenge with these projects that I'm doing here. But with this deep dive that I'm doing currently, I am going entirely chronologically, starting from antiquity and going all the way into eventually the present day. I'm listening to recordings, I'm reading books on the subjects, I've got piles of probably about 100 books or so lying right next to me. So a lot of reading to do. I'm writing notes about it. There's a lot of work that's going into this deep dive beyond just listening with these pair of headphones here. At first, the dive is going to be a little bit different because I'll be listening to pieces of music and individual songs that originated from before the time of sound recording. But once I get to the era of recorded music, specifically the mid-1880s or so, when phonograph recordings become commercialized, I will start doing more in-depth write-ups and analyses on the subject. Those write-ups are going to appear in a few different formats. Obviously, for starters, the YouTube channel, there will be videos about different recordings, artists, years in music specifically. There's plenty of stuff that will come down the pipeline. I'm not 100% sure about that particular direction yet, so I will clarify that more as I get closer to in the 1880s in this dive. There will also be a website. Now, at the time I'm recording this video, the website is not up, and I don't plan on launching it until I get to the point where I'm actually writing about recordings of music. But it may be up by the time you're watching this at some point in the indeterminate future, so I'll go ahead and give you the information now, even though, again, if you're watching this video at the time I'm recording it, this will mean nothing to you because the website doesn't exist yet. The website URL will be at www.recordedmusichistory.com, and I will make a video to confirm once it is launched. My plan is to do written write-ups on that website, and my goal is to have at least a 1 or 2 sentence capsule review of every single recording I listen to for this project. That includes albums, that includes mixtapes, that includes songs, everything. I want to have something to say about every single thing that I am listening to. Does it sound like a lot? Hell fucking yeah, it does. But there's a reason for it. And that reason is I want to write a book, or more likely a series of books on this very topic. To be clear, this is the longest of long-term goals, and I need to emphasize that. I need to make that explicitly clear to people. If you think about Mark Lewison and his current series of biographies on the Beatles, Lewison is a very big personal inspiration to me. It's been 20 years now since he started working on the Beatles all these years, trilogy of biographies, and he's only released one of the 3 parts during that time. Now, Lewison can go exponentially deeper on his choice of subject than I will be going, but this is an incredibly broad topic that I'm trying to tackle, fucking obviously. So the volume of what I need to grapple with is going to be really immense. So I have no knowledge, nor can I make any promises or even educated guesses about when a book would be finished, but just know that this is my goal at the end of the day. The other question I want to address, which I alluded to at the beginning, if I'm writing about music, why am I making videos about literature, eventually, about film and TV and other forms of art? Again, this is a cultural history that I'm trying to gather here, and I think most people understand by now that art forms are all related. And a film that becomes really popular, or even a video game that becomes popular, can have a huge effect on other aspects of other industries of artistry, and the music industry is no exception to that, obviously. I'm going to use a contemporary example of this to kind of help people grasp with the levels that I'm trying to analyze this. Since I'm making this video in 2022, the Kate Bush song, Running Up That Hill, A Deal with God, originally released in 1985, recharted this year and even hit #1 in several countries, including the UK, because of it appearing in Season 4 of the Netflix original series Stranger Things. If I want to talk in an educated way about the reemergence of this song, and make no mistake, you can't ignore this topic if you're writing about major events in 2022 popular music. It hit #1, for God's sakes. You need to have seen Stranger Things, not just Season 4 of Stranger Things or the scene where it's featured, but the whole show. And to understand the cultural clout that Stranger Things has, the type of cultural clout that would allow a nearly 40-year-old song to top the charts again, we have to understand Netflix's place in culture, in the entertainment industry. We have to understand what other shows and films Stranger Things is taking inspiration from, and how it evolved on those tropes to make them seem fresh. There's a lot of meat to dig into on just that singular topic alone, other media that I would have to investigate, watch, etc. And it's all essential. I can't ignore it if I want to provide the type of history that I want to provide to people. So yes, bottom line is, I'm doing deep dives not just into music, but into literature, into film, TV, video games, and obviously just history in general as a subject, so I can understand the moving pieces that would cause such dramatic or even small, seemingly small effects on the recorded music industry. And even while I'm doing those parts that aren't music related, I want to be able to share what I'm learning and start other discussions with people, so I'm not just going radio silent while reading about anything that isn't music related. Starting discussions helps me learn, helps me grow, and it'll allow me to better present the stories and musical content that made me want to do this project in the first place. So there will be a lot of non-musical content on this channel, especially starting off, since right now I'm not interested in doing videos just on like the classical pieces I'm listening to, for instance. I think to talk about classical works in a proper manner without getting into the weeds of theoretical analysis, that requires you to discuss the specific recording that you're using as a reference, and I would rather just save that for when I'm discussing those recordings in the context of when they were released. Hopefully that makes sense. But overall, that is my game plan. It's one I've thought over for a long time and actually was working on quite a bit before I started this channel. I just wanted to make an explanation and clarification video for all y'all since I've started uploading videos about this project. I figured you would probably want context about what this project actually is. I'm in it for the long haul. Hopefully people will be interested in joining me on this journey, and you can be sure to expect more and more videos going forward from here. Any questions, please leave them in the comments. I'll be more than happy to answer them. I'm very excited to continue on this trek with everybody. And until next time, I will see you again right here on Music Hub.